Welcome to Expeditionary Learning Part 5, Assessment. Please make sure that you have your handouts available, as well as your notebook where you've been taking notes, and a place to quick write. So please press pause and quick write on the following question. Why do we assess students? Thank you. Keep that in mind as we go through the types of assessments within EL and how they are important to both teachers and students. As a reminder from our session on the 4 T's, expeditionary learning was designed with curricular structures that motivate students to read and write with evidence, steeped in rich textual knowledge, and that are topic-based. These topics address content standards and rely on real-world informational texts. These texts are relevant to students and engage them in reading newspapers, blogs, articles, and other documents. We know that students engage in original research with primary source documents and data. We know that part of their assessments are problem and project-based units that incorporate fieldwork, the gathering of evidence, and written and oral presentations of solutions. We know that the curriculum is designed to build background knowledge through both whole group close reading as well as independent reading of additional texts that relate to the topics and units of study. And finally, all these assignments and assessments require students to support their thinking with evidence. We're talking about these briefly because the assessments that are embedded into expeditionary learning on a daily basis, as well as throughout the unit, make sure that students are making progress towards these important components. So let's talk about the different kinds of assessments. But first, it's important for everyone to have a solid foundation on the different types of assessments and how they kind of work together to form a data story. Assessment is the broad name for the collection and evaluation of evidence of a student's learning. It's integral to teaching and learning, and assessment has multiple purposes. It can enhance student engagement and motivation, particularly when it incorporates interaction with teachers, other students, and a range of resources. While expeditionary learning does have some traditional assessment formats, what you'll find largely is written and oral presentations that really push students to display their thinking across the standards. Within expeditionary learning, we do see 3 different types of assessment. The first is assessment for learning. This involves teachers using evidence about students' growing knowledge, understanding, and skills to inform teaching. This is often called formative assessment. It occurs throughout teaching and learning and helps a teacher clarify how a student is making progress. You'll sometimes see informal formative assessment, such as a fist of 5 or just a quick check for understanding or quick write, or you may see something a little bit more involved. Either way, what a teacher is doing with assessment for learning is checking to make sure that students are making progress towards the goal. Assessment as learning occurs when students are their own assessors. Students are monitoring their own learning, asking themselves a range of questions, and using strategies to decide what they know and can do, and what they need to do next. Expeditionary learning provides students daily opportunities to assess their progress towards the learning target, which is why many of the lessons begin with an unpacking of the learning target so that students understand where they are headed that day and can assess their own progress along the way. Finally, assessment of learning. This assists teachers in using evidence to assess achievement against outcomes and standards. This is often referred to as summative assessment. It usually occurs at defined key points, such as the mid-unit assessments and end-of-unit assessments that are embedded in expeditionary learning. These can also be used to rank or to grade students. So Think about assessment for learning and assessment as learning as preparing a recipe. You're adding spices, you're tasting along the way, you're making sure that you're creating something powerful. Assessment of learning is turning that recipe over to the judges and hope that it doesn't get rejected. But no matter what feedback you get in that assessment of learning recipe that has been judged, you'll know what you need to do differently next time. Assessment for and as learning, these formative assessments, is the process of seeking and interpreting evidence for use by learners and their teachers to decide where learners are in their learning, where they need to go, and how to get there. Now, teachers cannot wait to just use the data at the mid-unit or end-of-unit assessments to know if students have met the standards. By then, you're several days or weeks into a unit, and it may be too late to change course. Teachers must use daily assessments to tell their students are ready to be successful on these more summative assessments. So the first step in making sure that you are tracking this data story along the way is to analyze the mid and end of unit assessments. What is the thinking and work that students need to do? And how are they going to show their understanding? Then you're going to want to analyze the lessons leading up to that assessment. Where is the evidence of thinking and doing being produced? Where are they practicing it? If students need to show a body of knowledge on this mid or end of unit assessment, how do the lessons get them there? What standards are the key standards that are going to be talked about throughout that learning that they're going to display? Finally, you're definitely going to want to identify the daily assessment in each lesson. Will this assessment give you as the teacher the information that you need? Will it give students the information that they need in order to figure out where they are? And if not, what other assessment or check for understanding you need to put in place in order to make sure that students are making the progress that they should be? We know that assessments engage students in a display of their knowledge and provide information of progress towards these long-term targets. You'll see that in every lesson, the long-term targets addressed in each module and unit are outlined clearly right at the beginning in order for a teacher to constantly remind herself or himself of where students are intended to go. Mid-unit and end-of-unit assessments are very essential components of teaching the expeditionary learning curriculum. They are not optional. They reveal a number of different things. They are key components of qualitatively monitoring student progress. As we mentioned, students are doing oral presentations in these assessments. They are doing written essays. They provide key information on how students are doing with their writing and how they are making progress towards not just the reading standards, but the writing, language, and speaking and listening standard strands. Mid-unit and end-of-unit assessments identify instruction-aligned next steps to support student learning and curriculum. They will show clearly where the gaps are, where students did not fully learn, and where they have excelled. They demand that students cement and demonstrate that knowledge they are developing. If students have spent several weeks learning about a topic, they need to be able to display that knowledge. In many ways, these mid-unit and end-of-unit assessments honor the work that students have done with all of the reading and hard learning they've done throughout the unit. And finally, they provide rich, authentic experiences with writing and oral presentation. This is essential to cognitive development for students, as well as to making progress in the standards. So for your activity for this session, we'd like you to go to your handouts and read the mid-unit and end-of-unit assessment for the first unit of your grade. This should take you 15 to 20 minutes because you're also going to want to look through the lessons leading up to it and just see what are the daily assessments built into this unit? How do they guide you towards these mid-unit and end-of-unit assessments? Once you have a really good grasp of what assessments you're going to be working with in your first unit, please go to the discussion board and answer the following question. What will you learn from the application of these assessments? How do they show progress towards the shifts and the standards? Thank you, and we'll see you for part 6.